The studio lights blazed down on the polished floor, illuminating the host and the guest as tension crackled in the air like static electricity. From the moment the cameras began rolling, the audience leaned forward in anticipation, sensing that today's episode would be unlike any other. The host smiled nervously, trying to maintain a composed exterior while glancing at the teleprompter. The guest adjusted their posture and took a deep breath, knowing that the upcoming conversation would test patience' boundaries and reputations alike. Every movement, every glance seemed charged with unspoken challenges. The murmurs of the crowd faded into a tense silence, punctuated only by the soft hum of equipment and the occasional click of a camera shutter. A subtle but undeniable energy built steadily with each passing second, signaling that a confrontation was imminent and that the episode would leave an indelible mark on everyone watching, setting the stage for an unforgettable moment that would dominate headlines, social media feeds, and water cooler conversations for days to come. As the guest finally stepped onto the stage, the applause from the audience rang out briefly before fading into an uneasy silence. The host extended a hand with a practiced smile, but the tension between them was palpable. Every word exchanged would be dissected later in countless headlines. The cameras captured every subtle twitch and glance, as if magnifying the smallest sign of discomfort. The guest's eyes scanned the set, taking in the bright lights, the assembled crew, and the expectant faces of viewers, knowing that one misstep could ignite a firestorm of controversy. The host cleared their throat and began with a question that seemed innocuous on the surface but carried an undercurrent of challenge designed to provoke a reaction. The guests' lips tightened slightly and their posture stiffened, signaling that the conversation was about to escalate beyond casual discussion into a high-stakes clash that would define the tone of the episode. From that moment forward, the air seemed to vibrate with anticipation, and the audience collectively held their breath, waiting to witness the first spark that would set the stage for an unforgettable confrontation. The guest leaned slightly forward, their gaze fixed on the host, every word measured yet loaded with subtle intensity, as if daring the host to push further. The audience remained silent, captivated by the electric tension that had replaced the usual cheerful chatter. The host, trying to maintain control of the conversation, shifted in their seat and posed another question, one that seemed casual but was loaded with implications designed to test the guest's composure. The guest's eyes narrowed for a fraction of a second before they responded with carefully chosen words that hinted at underlying frustration and an unwillingness to be provoked. The cameras captured every micro-expression, every slight pause, and every controlled breath, magnifying the drama unfolding in real time. Viewers at home could sense that this was no ordinary interview, that this was a clash of wills and personalities destined to spiral into a fiery exchange. The energy in the room thickened as if the air itself were charged with anticipation, and the crew behind the cameras exchanged quiet glances, knowing that they were witnessing a moment that would be replayed endlessly on social media and news outlets, cementing itself in the collective memory of the audience long after the show had ended. A faint murmur ran through the audience as the guest's tone sharpened slightly, signaling that the calm veneer of civility was beginning to crack. The host's smile faltered for just a moment before they steadied themselves and attempted to redirect the conversation toward safer territory, but the guest was clearly unwilling to be guided so easily. Every answer carried an edge of defiance, a subtle challenge that invited the host to escalate the tension further. The studio lights reflected off the polished surfaces, casting long shadows across the set, making the scene feel almost cinematic. The cameras circled and focused on each nuanced gesture. The audience leaned forward, instinctively sensing that the next few minutes could ignite an explosive confrontation. The host's voice wavered ever so slightly as they asked a pointed question that brushed against a sensitive topic. The guest's expression hardened and their posture shifted, signaling a readiness to confront the challenge head-on. The atmosphere thickened with suspense and electricity, as if time itself had slowed, leaving everyone present acutely aware that they were witnessing the first real spark in a conversation destined to spiral into an unforgettable clash that would dominate headlines and social media chatter for days. The guest paused for a fraction of a second, letting the weight of the host's question settle like a heavy fog over the studio, and the audience held its collective breath in that brief suspended moment, sensing that words spoken next could change the tone of the entire show. The host leaned slightly closer, their expression a mix of curiosity and cautious provocation, trying to read every micro-expression for any hint of weakness, while the guests' eyes flickered with controlled intensity, a silent declaration that they would not be easily swayed or intimidated. The tension became almost tangible, thickening the air as though the studio itself were holding its breath, every crew member aware of the high stakes and the potential for chaos. The conversation, once lighthearted and routine, had transformed into a subtle psychological duel, each carefully chosen phrase carrying layers of meaning and challenge. Social media and news outlets, if they could see the scene unfolding in real time, would undoubtedly seize upon every glance, every pause, and every nuanced inflection to create endless narratives, memes, and commentary. The guest's voice, calm but edged with firm conviction, cut through the silence, signaling that they were fully aware of the host's attempts to provoke, and the studio audience felt the moment of unspoken standoff settle over them like a storm cloud on the horizon, knowing that the episode had just reached a pivotal turning point. The host, sensing that the conversation had reached a critical juncture, shifted slightly in their chair, attempting to regain control and maintain the appearance of calm authority, yet the subtle tremor in their voice betrayed a hint of unease as they carefully selected their next words. The guest, fully aware of the host's intentions, leaned back just enough to convey measured confidence, their eyes locked on the host in a silent challenge that seemed to dare anyone to push further. The audience was mesmerized, leaning forward in unison, caught in the magnetic tension radiating from the stage, every gesture, every micro-expression amplified in significance. Cameras panned deliberately, capturing close-ups of hands tightening on armrests, the flicker of a smirk, the almost imperceptible narrowing of eyes, each detail building the suspense to an almost unbearable degree. Crew members exchanged tense glances, knowing that this moment would become a defining clip from the episode, one that would dominate online discussions and news cycles, dissected frame by frame. Words were exchanged cautiously yet charged with undercurrents of confrontation, the atmosphere heavy with anticipation, as the guest subtly shifted the conversation in a direction that threatened to expose vulnerabilities and provoke reactions, signaling that the controlled facade of a routine interview was dissolving into something raw, unpredictable, and destined to leave a lasting impression on everyone watching. The tension in the studio escalated as the guests' responses grew sharper, each sentence carefully crafted to assert control while maintaining a veneer of composure, a delicate balance that held the audience in rapt attention. The host's attempts to steer the conversation back to safer topics were met with subtle but unmistakable resistance, every word from the guest carrying the weight of a challenge that left little room for evasion. The cameras captured every flicker of expression, every tightening of a jaw, every subtle shift in posture, amplifying the drama and magnifying the psychological duel unfolding before the viewers at home. The audience, sensing that something extraordinary was happening, collectively leaned forward, their anticipation almost palpable, as if they could feel the invisible lines of tension stretching across the set. Crew members behind the scenes exchanged quiet, concerned glances, aware that any misstep could send the episode spiraling into chaos, and that this moment would be replayed endlessly across social media platforms. Each carefully chosen phrase seemed to carry a dual purpose, part answer, part provocation, creating a complex dance of dialogue where the stakes were measured not in topics discussed but in dominance, control, and reputation. The atmosphere thickened, charged with the silent electricity of unspoken threats and challenges, as everyone present understood that the show had crossed the threshold from routine interview to unforgettable confrontation, marking a pivotal point in the episode that would define its legacy long after the cameras stopped rolling. The guest's voice remained calm yet firm, each word deliberate and precise, creating a tension that seemed almost tangible in the air as if the studio itself were holding its breath in anticipation of the next move. The host's composure, though outwardly maintained, revealed subtle cracks, a slight tightening of the jaw, a flicker in the eyes, that the audience instinctively recognized as signs of mounting pressure. The conversation had transformed into a high-stakes duel of wills, where every phrase, every nuance, and every pause was loaded with meaning beyond the surface, compelling the viewers to hang on to every syllable. Crew members behind the cameras exchanged uneasy glances, fully aware that the drama unfolding before them was unprecedented for this show, a rare moment where reality and spectacle collided with unrelenting intensity. The audience's murmurs subsided into complete silence, their attention entirely captured by the interplay of dominance and restraint, the subtle psychological chess match that had replaced the usual lighthearted banter. Social media watchers, if following along, would undoubtedly dissect every frame, every glance, and every micro-expression, turning this encounter into an endless loop of discussion and speculation. The guest leaned slightly forward, not in aggression but in measured assertion, signaling that they were fully in control of their narrative, while the host carefully measured each response, attempting to navigate the precarious balance between maintaining authority and avoiding a public unraveling. The tension thickened with every passing second, charged with an electric anticipation that promised the inevitable escalation into a confrontation that would resonate far beyond the walls of the studio and long after the cameras ceased rolling. The studio felt almost frozen in time as the guests' sharp but composed responses continued to challenge the host's control, each carefully measured phrase cutting through the tension like a precise blade while leaving room for interpretation that only fueled speculation among the audience. The host, feeling the mounting pressure, adjusted in their seat, their forced smile flickering ever so slightly as they searched for a way to regain the upper hand, but the guest's unwavering gaze made it clear that any attempt at manipulation would be met with firm resistance. Cameras zoomed in on the subtle gestures that betrayed emotion, the slight narrowing of eyes, the tightening of fists, the brief inhale before delivering a pointed remark. Every moment amplified the drama unfolding in real time, capturing a psychological duel that was as compelling as it was unpredictable. The audience leaned forward collectively, sensing the breaking point approaching, their excitement mingled with anxiety as they anticipated the next spark that would set the stage for a climactic confrontation. Crew members behind the cameras held their breath, aware that any misstep could transform tension into chaos, a moment that would dominate news cycles and social media discourse for days. Words exchanged now carried layers of meaning, a complex interplay of challenge, dominance, and subtle provocation, each response meticulously calculated to assert control without outright aggression. The atmosphere grew heavier, charged with anticipation and unspoken intensity, signaling that the episode had passed the point of casual dialogue and entered a realm of unforgettable spectacle, where every viewer sensed that something remarkable, volatile, and historically memorable was unfolding live before their eyes. The tension reached its peak as the guest, maintaining an air of calm authority, delivered a response that was both pointed and unapologetically firm, leaving the host momentarily at a loss for words and the audience completely captivated by the unfolding drama. Every camera angle captured the subtle shifts in posture, the slight quiver of a hand, the almost imperceptible narrowing of eyes. Each detail magnified the intensity and psychological weight of the exchange, transforming the studio into a charged arena of verbal sparring and silent power struggles. The host, regaining composure but with a noticeable edge of caution, attempted to steer the conversation toward safer ground, yet the guest's poised defiance made it clear that no attempt at redirection would go uncontested, signaling an unspoken warning that they would not be manipulated or cornered. The audience leaned forward in unison, sensing the imminent escalation, their collective anticipation almost tangible, as though the air itself had thickened with suspense and expectation. Crew members exchanged tense glances behind the cameras, acutely aware that they were witnessing a moment destined for replay across social media, news coverage, and countless analyses that would dissect every expression and inflection for weeks to come. The conversation, now fully transformed from ordinary interview into high-stakes confrontation, revealed the fragile balance of control, dominance, and restraint, with each carefully chosen phrase carrying multiple layers of meaning and consequence. The atmosphere was electric, charged with anticipation and silent acknowledgement that this encounter would be remembered long after the cameras stopped rolling, a defining moment of the episode that would dominate conversations and headlines alike, cementing itself in the collective memory of viewers as a truly unforgettable clash.